The Midnight Express, one of the greatest tag teams in wrestling history, has never been inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Behind the polished image of sports entertainment lies a web of backstage politics, personal grudges, and corporate vendettas that have kept wrestling's most technically gifted duo in the shadows. This is the story of how the Midnight Express changed tag team wrestling forever, and why their legacy remains one of wrestling's most controversial topics today. In 1980, Dennis Condrey and Randy Rose formed the Midnight Express in Southeastern Championship Wrestling, creating something that would change tag team wrestling forever. Condrey was already making a name for himself as a technically sound wrestler who could work any style. Rose brought his own brand of ring psychology and heel instincts. When they joined forces, they didn't just form another tag team. They created a concept that operated like nothing wrestling had seen before. Most tag teams in 1980 were simple. You had your good guys who shook hands and played by the rules. You had your bad guys who cheated and acted tough. The Midnight Express threw out that playbook completely. The early version of the team later expanded into a three-man group with Norvell Austin, and they would sometimes invoke the Freebird rule that allowed any two members to defend the tag team titles at any time. This meant their opponents never knew which combination they would face or what strategy to prepare for. According to wrestling historians, they named themselves the Midnight Express because they dressed in black, drank, and partied past midnight. The Express dressed in black from head to toe, like funeral directors heading to a service. Their ring gear was all black, their boots were black, even their hair was slicked back with dark styling products. This wasn't just a fashion choice, it was psychological warfare designed to make them look like harbingers of doom walking to the ring. Other teams wore bright colors or flashy outfits to get attention. The Midnight Express used darkness to create an aura that made fans uncomfortable before the match even started. Their wrestling style and psychological approach set them apart from typical brawling teams of the era. While most heel tag teams relied on cheap shots and outside interference, the Express combined technical wrestling with sophisticated crowd manipulation. They studied their opponents like scientists examining specimens under a microscope. Condrey would target specific body parts with surgical precision. Rose would follow up with moves designed to maximize psychological impact on both the opponent and the crowd. They understood how to build heat through subtle gestures and perfectly timed verbal exchanges. A simple sneer from Condrey could turn a neutral crowd hostile. A condescending comment from Rose could make fans throw trash at ringside. Their ring work demonstrated technical consistency that made other teams look amateur by comparison. They perfected timing sequences that appeared effortless but required hundreds of hours of practice. Their double-team moves flowed together like a choreographed dance of destruction. When one member distracted the referee, the other would execute illegal moves with clinical precision. They never rushed. They never panicked. They operated with the cold efficiency of professional assassins. Their ruthless efficiency extended beyond individual matches into long-term storytelling. They would plant seeds of future feuds weeks in advance through small actions that seemed insignificant at the time. The success they built across multiple territories translated into a reputation that spread through word of mouth as wrestlers and fans shared stories about their methods. They developed a consistent track record of strong matches because they understood that their job was to make the audience care about what happened in the ring. The Express had become characters who existed in fans' minds even when the shows ended. People talked about them during the week between events. They speculated about their motivations and wondered what they might do next. This level of audience investment was rare in wrestling and proved that technical excellence combined with strong character work could create something special. Their success in Southeast Championship Wrestling caught the attention of other promoters, who recognized that the Express represented something different from typical tag team acts. They had created a template for heel psychology that influenced wrestling for decades. But their foundation was about to attract someone who would transform them from a successful regional act into something much bigger. A young man with a tennis racket and a mouth that moved faster than his brain was about to change everything about how the wrestling world viewed the Midnight Express. A young Jim Cornette brought a secret weapon that terrified wrestlers when he joined the Midnight Express. Most managers in the early 1980s were older men who stood quietly at ringside and occasionally interfered in matches. Cornette threw out that playbook and created something completely different. He was loud and absolutely fearless when it came to getting heat from crowds. His motor-mouth promos and tennis racket attacks created a new template for wrestling managers that changed the business forever. Cornette's rapid-fire speaking style could generate genuine hatred from crowds in seconds. He talked faster than most people could think, firing off insults and observations with machine gun precision. His rapid-fire promos and confrontational presence made him instantly hated and a central part of the act. Fans who came to wrestling shows expecting simple good guys versus bad guys found themselves listening to complex psychological warfare delivered at breakneck speed. Cornette's confrontational style regularly drew heat and provoked both opponents and audiences with his harsh commentary. While other managers stood quietly at ringside, Cornette turned every match into psychological warfare. He paced back and forth like a caged animal, constantly talking to his wrestlers and their opponents. His commentary created a running narrative that made fans feel like they were watching a master manipulator at work. He would point out his team's technical superiority while simultaneously planting doubts about their opponent's abilities. This constant chatter made it impossible for audiences to relax and simply enjoy the matches. The tennis racket became a signature element of Cornette's arsenal through strategic timing. Other managers used brass knuckles or chairs in obvious ways that telegraphed their interference. Cornette's tennis racket seemed innocent until he swung it with devastating accuracy. He studied opponents' movement patterns and waited for the perfect moment to strike. The racket functioned as both a weapon and a psychological tool that made every wrestler nervous when Cornette was at ringside. They knew he was watching and waiting for his opportunity. Cornette's managerial work involved strategic preparation and promo writing that other managers later copied. He would make specific references to opponents' personal lives and wrestling weaknesses during pre-match interviews. This research made his promos feel more personal and threatening than typical wrestling trash talk. Wrestlers found themselves thinking about Cornette's words instead of focusing on their match preparation. The tar and feathering of Magnum TA in Mid-South Wrestling showcased Cornette's twisted creativity and willingness to cross lines other managers wouldn't approach. This angle was used to generate lasting heat versus Magnum TA and went beyond typical wrestling storylines into something that felt genuinely dangerous and personal. Cornette didn't just want to beat his enemies, he wanted to humiliate them in ways that fans would never forget. The visual of a popular wrestler covered in tar and feathers created heat that lasted for months and demonstrated that Cornette understood how to create lasting emotional responses. His management style elevated average wrestlers into main event stars through his ability to give them credibility and character depth. Wrestlers who had struggled to connect with audiences suddenly became major draws when Cornette started speaking for them. He identified their strengths and built storylines around those qualities while hiding their weaknesses through clever booking suggestions. His promos made his wrestlers seem more important and dangerous than their actual skills might have warranted. Cornette's influence extended beyond just talking. He understood crowd dynamics and knew exactly which buttons to push to get specific reactions. His heat-generating abilities were so effective that other promoters started copying his techniques. Younger managers began adopting his rapid-fire speaking style and confrontational approach to crowd interaction. The combination of intelligence and viciousness in Cornette's character made him different from traditional wrestling managers. He wasn't just a tough guy or a smooth talker. He was a strategic thinker who used violence and verbal attacks with equal skill. This made him unpredictable and kept opponents guessing about what he might do next. Fans never knew if they would see clever psychological manipulation or sudden physical violence when Cornette was involved. Cornette had created a new breed of heel manager that combined intelligence with viciousness in ways wrestling had never seen before. His success with the Midnight Express proved that managers could be more than just supporting characters. They could be the driving force behind entire storylines and the primary reason fans bought tickets to wrestling shows. His innovations influenced generations of managers who followed. But the original lineup was about to undergo a change that would transform the team into something even more dangerous. When Bobby Eaton joined Dennis Condrey in 1983, wrestling insiders knew they were witnessing something special. Eaton had been working in various Southern territories for several years, but hadn't found the right situation to showcase his abilities. He was a natural athlete who could execute technical moves that looked effortless, while generating genuine heat from crowds. His background gave him skills that complemented what Condrey brought to the team in ways that surprised everyone involved. Many people backstage doubted whether replacing Randy Rose would work. Rose had been with the team since the beginning, and fans were used to seeing him as part of the Midnight Express identity. Eaton brought skills that no one expected when he first joined the group. His amateur wrestling background gave him a technical foundation that was different from most wrestlers of that era. He could work chain wrestling sequences that looked smooth and natural instead of rehearsed. Eaton's natural athleticism complemented Condrey's methodical style perfectly. Where Condrey was calculated and precise, Eaton was fluid and instinctive. Condrey would slow down matches to build heat through psychological tactics. Eaton would speed them up with athletic moves that kept audiences engaged. This combination created a dynamic that felt fresh even to fans who had been watching the Midnight Express for years. Their innovative double-team moves showcased exceptional coordination and technical precision. High-impact assisted top rope maneuvers became their specialty, with Eaton climbing to the top rope while Condrey held their opponent in position. These moves required exact positioning and split-second timing to execute safely. When done correctly, they looked devastating and professional. Other teams tried to copy their approach but never achieved the same precision. Perfectly timed combination moves demonstrated their chemistry in ways that set them apart from other tag teams. Both wrestlers would execute synchronized attacks that required perfect coordination because any mistiming would make the moves look fake or dangerous. Eaton and Condrey practiced these sequences for hours until they became second nature. Their double-team repertoire became templates that other tag teams studied and tried to replicate. They developed timing that made their matches feel like choreographed violence. Every move flowed into the next, without awkward pauses or obvious setups. Their matches had a rhythm that felt natural even when they were executing complex sequences. This came from an instinctive understanding of each other's wrestling style and the ability to adjust their pace based on crowd reactions without losing flow. Their ability to work as a unit while maintaining individual personalities set them apart from other teams. Condrey remained the calculating strategist who thought several moves ahead. Eaton was the athletic show-off who could pull off spectacular moves when needed. These distinct roles gave fans different reasons to hate each wrestler while appreciating their combined effectiveness. They weren't just two guys who happened to team together. They were distinct characters who worked better as a partnership. According to available records, Condrey and Eaton held dozens of tag titles in their careers, sometimes cited as 53 combined tag title reigns, illustrating their dominance across territories. This success came from their dedication to perfecting their craft. They watched tapes of their matches to identify areas for improvement. They discussed strategies for working with different opponents and creating memorable moments. This preparation showed in their ring work because they always seemed to know exactly what to do in any situation. The Condrey-Eaton version became known as the Thinking Fans Tag Team, who never had bad matches. Wrestling experts and hardcore fans recognized their technical abilities and storytelling skills. They could work with inexperienced wrestlers and make them look good. They could work with veterans and create classic matches. Their consistency was remarkable because they approached every match with the same level of preparation and professionalism. Their reputation spread beyond just Southern wrestling territories. Wrestling magazines wrote about their matches and technical abilities. Other wrestlers talked about working with them and learning from their approach to tag team psychology. They became the gold standard that all future tag teams measured themselves against. Teams would be described as being almost as good as the Midnight Express, which became the highest compliment in tag team wrestling. The Condrey-Eaton version represented everything that was great about wrestling in the mid-1980s. They combined athletic ability with character work and storytelling in ways that created lasting memories for fans. Their matches felt important even when they weren't for championships because fans knew they would see something special. This reputation for excellence made them attractive to promoters who wanted reliable draws for their wrestling shows. Their territorial success was about to catch the attention of someone who could offer them something they had never experienced before. They signed with Jim Crockett Promotions in 1985 and began appearing on Superstation TBS, giving the Midnight Express something they had never had before: a national audience. Wrestling in 1985 was changing fast. Cable television was expanding across America, and Superstation TBS reached millions of homes every week. The Midnight Express had built their reputation working in smaller territories where only local fans knew about their abilities. Now they would perform for wrestling fans across the entire country who had never seen them work before. Their 1985 arrival in JCP coincided with wrestling's expansion into mainstream television. Cable companies were adding new channels, and wrestling was becoming more accessible to casual viewers. Families who had never attended live wrestling shows could now watch matches in their living rooms every weekend. This created opportunities for wrestlers who could adapt their territory-style work to television audiences. The Midnight Express faced the challenge of translating their heel psychology to viewers who didn't know their history or understand their character motivations. National exposure meant facing tougher competition and higher expectations every week. JCP featured some of the best wrestlers in the world, and the Midnight Express would be judged against that level of talent. Television matches had different pacing requirements than live events. Wrestlers needed to grab attention quickly and maintain viewer interest without the live crowd energy to carry them through slower sections. Commercial breaks interrupted match flow and required wrestlers to rebuild momentum multiple times during single matches. The pressure intensified because Superstation TBS broadcasts reached wrestling fans who had strong opinions about what constituted good wrestling. These viewers had seen the best teams from different territories and would not be impressed by mediocre performances. The Midnight Express needed to prove they belonged on national television by delivering consistently excellent matches against established stars who already had nationwide recognition. Their February 1986 NWA World Tag Team Championship victory on Superstars on the Superstation shocked crowds who weren't expecting the title change on television. Most fans assumed championship matches on television would end in disqualifications or countouts to protect the champions and build toward pay-per-view rematches. When the Midnight Express actually won the belts, the crowd reaction was genuine surprise mixed with anger. Television viewers across America watched Cornette celebrate while Eaton and Condrey held the championship gold for the first time on national television. Superstation TBS broadcasts made them household names across America in ways that territory wrestling never could. Wrestling fans in New York could now watch the same matches as fans in Georgia or Texas. This created a shared experience that helped build the Midnight Express into a national phenomenon. Their matches generated viewer mail from dozens of states, and wrestling magazines started featuring them in major articles. Cornette's promos reached audiences who had never heard his rapid-fire speaking style before. They adapted their territory-style psychology to television audiences by maintaining their character consistency while adjusting their match pacing for television viewing. Their heel tactics worked just as effectively on television as they did in live arenas. Cornette's commentary and interference translated perfectly to television because cameras could capture his facial expressions and tactical decisions that live audiences might miss. The Express learned to work with television production crews who needed specific camera angles and timing for commercial breaks. Defending championships against teams like the Road Warriors created enormous pressure because these matches felt like legitimate tests of their abilities. On television, the Express's technical, cheating style made for compelling clashes with power teams like the Road Warriors, which translated well to national audiences. Where the Express relied on technical skill and psychology, the Warriors used raw power and intimidation. These stylistic contrasts created compelling television that showcased different approaches to tag team wrestling. Television matches against top competition proved the Midnight Express could work with any style and make their opponents look good, while still getting themselves over as despicable heels. Their matches with established teams like the Fabulous Ones and the Rock and Roll Express demonstrated their versatility and professional approach. They never had bad matches because they understood their job was making television viewers care about what happened in the ring. Their reputation as the team that could make any opponent look like $1 million became valuable currency in the wrestling business. Promoters trusted them to work with inexperienced wrestlers and veteran stars equally well. This reliability made them essential to JCP's television programming because they delivered quality matches regardless of their opponents or circumstances. Their TV exposure on TBS turned them into national names, created significant viewer interest through mail and buzz, and made them reliable draws on tour dates. Wrestling fans who had never attended live events started buying tickets when JCP toured their cities specifically to see the Midnight Express perform in person. But among all their opponents, one team would create a rivalry that transcended wrestling itself. The Rock and Roll Express represented everything the Midnight Express despised when their long-running rivalry began in Mid-South Wrestling in 1984 and later reignited in Jim Crockett Promotions. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson looked like they stepped out of a teen magazine with their feathered hair and pretty boy image. They wore bright colors and smiled at fans before matches. The Midnight Express saw them as everything wrong with wrestling. Here were two guys who got by on looks instead of skill. The contrast created the perfect storm for a rivalry that would define an entire era. Their rivalry transcended wrestling and became a cultural phenomenon across the South. Fans picked sides like they were choosing between political parties. Kids wore Rock and Roll Express t-shirts to school. The feud generated sellouts and intensive fan engagement across the territory system, as crowds packed arenas to witness their battles. The rivalry became part of Southern culture in ways that wrestling rarely achieved. People talked about these matches at work and planned their weekends around wrestling shows. Their matches followed a formula that never got old because of perfect execution. The Express would dominate early using technical skills and dirty tactics. Morton would take punishment while Gibson waited on the apron for his chance to enter. The crowd would build sympathy for Morton as he absorbed more punishment. Then Gibson would get the hot tag and the arena would explode. This formula worked because both teams understood their roles perfectly and executed them with precision every single time. Matches often produced deafening crowd reactions and sellouts as the feud became one of the defining tag team stories of the territory era. When Morton finally tagged Gibson, entire buildings would shake from fans jumping out of their seats. The noise was overwhelming during 2 counts when it looked like the Rock and Roll Express might win. Fans threw trash when the Midnight Express cheated to retain advantages. These weren't polite golf claps. These were genuine emotional reactions from people invested in the outcome. Morton's Face in Peril segments became the gold standard for tag team psychology. He could sell punishment like he was actually dying in the ring. His facial expressions communicated genuine suffering without overdoing it. The Express would target his back or leg, and Morton would favor that body part for the entire match. He made fans believe he was one move away from being seriously injured. This created urgency that had crowds begging for Gibson to make the save. Gibson's hot tags generated electricity that promoters dream about. When he finally entered the ring, the crowd explosion was instantaneous and overwhelming. He moved faster than seemed humanly possible after watching Morton get beaten down for 15 minutes. His offense looked crisp and devastating after fans had watched the Express control the pace. Gibson's timing was perfect because he knew exactly when crowds needed that emotional release. He was a master at reading audience energy and delivering what they craved. Both teams elevated each other to legendary status through their competition. The Rock and Roll Express became bigger stars because they had worthy opponents who made them look heroic. The Midnight Express generated more heat because fans genuinely wanted to see them lose to Morton and Gibson. Neither team would have achieved the same level of success without the other. Their rivalry proved that wrestling worked best when both sides brought their absolute best to every encounter. Backstage, both teams respected each other's abilities and worked together to create memorable moments. They planned their matches like military operations with specific spots designed to generate maximum crowd response. The Express would suggest ways to make Morton's suffering look more realistic. Gibson would time his hot tags based on crowd noise levels. This collaboration created matches that felt spontaneous while actually being carefully orchestrated performances. The feud produced numerous classic matches across territories following a consistent storytelling template that wrestlers still study today. The formula of working the face, building to the hot tag, and creating the explosion became the blueprint for tag team psychology. Wrestling schools used their matches as textbook examples of how to build heat and create emotional investment. Their influence extended far beyond their active careers and continues to shape how tag teams approach their craft. But their rivalry was about to reach a dangerous new level when promoters decided the feud needed a spectacular finale that would push the boundaries of what wrestling entertainment could be. Starrcade 1986's scaffold match between the Midnight Express and the Road Warriors looked spectacular on paper, but it became a nightmare that haunts Jim Cornette to this day. The concept was simple and terrifying. Two teams would fight on a narrow platform suspended 20 feet above the ring. The first team to throw their opponents off the scaffold would win the match. Wrestling fans had never seen anything like it before. The visual promised to be incredible, and the danger seemed manageable from a distance. The scaffold match at Starrcade 1986 promised to be the ultimate gimmick match to settle their feud with the Road Warriors. Promoters wanted something that would feel bigger than a regular wrestling match. The Road Warriors were known for their power and intimidation tactics. The Midnight Express relied on technical skills and manager interference. Fighting on a narrow platform would theoretically neutralize some advantages and create unpredictable drama. The scaffold match seemed like the perfect way to end their rivalry with something fans would never forget. Nobody had properly tested how dangerous fighting on a narrow platform 20 feet in the air could be. Wrestling matches usually happen in rings with ropes and padding to protect wrestlers from serious injury. The scaffold had none of these safety features. It was basically a construction platform with minimal railings suspended high above concrete floors. The platform was narrow enough that normal wrestling moves would be impossible. Every step carried the risk of losing balance and falling. The crowd's excitement turned to genuine concern as the match became more dangerous than anyone expected. Fans cheered when wrestlers came close to the edge, but gasped when they realized how high 20 feet actually was. The wrestlers moved carefully and deliberately instead of with their usual athletic grace. Every near fall looked potentially lethal instead of entertaining. The atmosphere in the arena changed from excitement to nervous tension as people realized they might witness serious injuries. Jim Cornette positioned himself near the scaffold to interfere when opportunities arose. His tennis racket became useless because he couldn't reach the platform from ground level. He climbed partway up the scaffold structure to get closer to the action. This put him in a dangerous position where his footing was unstable and his escape routes were limited. He was focused on helping his team win instead of protecting himself from injury. Cornette's accidental fall happened when he lost his grip while trying to interfere in the match. He tumbled 20 feet and seriously injured his knee when he hit the concrete floor. The fall punctured the spectacle with a real medical emergency as the arena reaction shifted immediately from excitement to genuine concern. The incident left him with a long-term knee problem and became the most remembered aspect of the match. The aftermath was immediate and serious. Cornette lay motionless on the concrete while medical personnel rushed to help him. His leg was twisted at an unnatural angle that made fans sick to their stomachs. The match continued above, while Cornette received medical attention below. The wrestlers on the scaffold could see their manager being loaded onto a stretcher. The injury changed Cornette's mobility permanently and affected his ability to perform his manager duties. The realization that the match had gone too far for entertainment hit everyone involved. Wrestling was supposed to be dangerous but controlled. The scaffold match proved that some concepts were too risky to execute safely. Fans who came for entertainment witnessed a genuine medical emergency. The injury overshadowed the match result and became the story everyone remembered. The spectacle had become tragedy. The scaffold match became legendary for all the wrong reasons, proving some risks weren't worth taking. Wrestling historians point to this match as an example of gimmicks that prioritized shock value over performer safety. Cornette's injury served as a warning about the dangers of extreme stipulations. The match damaged everyone involved and created lasting trauma that affected their careers. Behind the scenes, changes were already happening that would reshape the Midnight Express forever. The team that had built their reputation on consistency and technical excellence was about to face their biggest challenge yet. Success had brought them national recognition, but it had also created pressures that would test the very foundation of what made them special. Dennis Condrey's last appearance for Jim Crockett Promotions on March 24, 1987, shocked the wrestling world and left fans wondering what really happened. Condrey walked away from the company without public warning or explanation. He didn't give interviews about his decision. He didn't say goodbye to fans. He simply disappeared from wrestling at the exact moment when the Midnight Express was drawing the biggest crowds of their career. The timing made his departure even more puzzling. WrestleMania 3 was happening in just 4 days. Wrestling was experiencing unprecedented mainstream attention. Cable television was expanding their audience every week. Condrey chose this moment to walk away from the biggest opportunity of his career. People backstage were stunned because wrestlers don't usually quit when they're on top of the world. Behind the scenes, tensions that led to Condrey's decision remain largely unknown, though competing accounts have emerged over the years. Bobby Eaton stated that Condrey left without offering any explanation to his tag team partner. Eaton woke up one day and discovered that Condrey was gone, with no phone calls, meetings, or discussions about problems. However, Condrey later claimed that he and others had met with Vince McMahon, suggesting possible WWE recruitment attempts. Wrestling insiders also reported that personal issues may have played a role, with divorce proceedings and family problems possibly affecting his mental state. The constant travel and pressure of maintaining their success may have caught up with him, as the lifestyle of a professional wrestler can destroy relationships and create problems that fans never see. Dusty Rhodes chose Stan Lane to team with Bobby Eaton soon after Condrey left, creating uncertainty about whether the magic could continue with a new lineup. Lane was a singles wrestler from Florida who had never been part of a major tag team. He didn't have the same technical background as Condrey. His wrestling style was different, his personality was different. Fans wondered if Jim Cornette could work the same magic with a completely different type of wrestler. The Midnight Express concept had never been tested with such a dramatic personnel change. Lane brought a different energy and wrestling style to the team that surprised everyone involved. Where Condrey was methodical and calculating, Lane was explosive and unpredictable. He moved faster in the ring and took more risks. His athletic background gave him abilities that Condrey never had. Lane could execute high-flying moves and power techniques with equal skill. This versatility created new possibilities for double-team combinations and match psychology. The chemistry between Eaton and Lane surprised even longtime fans who thought the original lineup could never be replaced. They developed their own rhythm and timing that felt natural instead of forced. Lane adapted quickly to Cornette's management style and understood how to generate heat from crowds. Eaton helped teach him the psychological aspects of heel wrestling that made the Midnight Express special. Their partnership felt genuine instead of like a desperate attempt to recreate past success. Their immediate success proved the transition worked better than anyone expected. They reached the semi-finals of the Crockett Cup tournament and won the NWA United States Tag Team Championship on May 16, 1987, less than 2 months after Condrey's departure. The speed of their success silenced critics who thought the team was finished. They went on to win the United States Tag Team Championship 3 times during their partnership. Each victory built confidence and proved their legitimacy as a championship-caliber team. The September 1988 NWA World Tag Team Championship victory over Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard represented their greatest achievement together. The Horsemen were considered the best tag team in wrestling at that time. Defeating them for the World Championship proved that the Lane-Eaton version belonged in the main event. Their title reign lasted over a month before the Road Warriors ended it, but the victory established them as legitimate successors to the original Midnight Express legacy. The Lane-Eaton version proved the Midnight Express concept was bigger than any individual wrestler. The success continued despite losing one of the founding members. The formula of technical wrestling, combined with Cornette's psychology, worked regardless of personnel changes. This adaptability became one of their greatest strengths and showed that great wrestling concepts can survive roster changes when executed properly. Their success in Jim Crockett Promotions was about to attract attention from the biggest wrestling company in the world, offering opportunities that would test whether their Southern-bred psychology could translate to an entirely different kind of entertainment. The Midnight Express joined the WWE around 1990 for what promised to be their biggest payday, but the financial rewards came with unexpected creative costs. Vince McMahon was building his wrestling empire into a national entertainment company that dwarfed anything the Southern Territories could offer. The money was bigger. The exposure was unprecedented. Television reached millions of homes every week. For wrestlers who had spent years working regional shows, the WWE represented the ultimate prize. Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane signed contracts that guaranteed them more money than they had ever seen before. McMahon's national expansion offered opportunities that Southern Territories couldn't match. The WWE had merchandising deals that could make wrestlers rich beyond their wrestling paychecks. Action figures, t-shirts, video games. The marketing machine turned wrestlers into household names across America. Cable television contracts brought wrestling into millions of living rooms. Pay-per-view events generated revenue streams that regional promoters could only dream about. The WWE was becoming bigger than wrestling itself. The WWE's cartoonish sports entertainment style clashed with the Midnight Express's sophisticated psychology in ways that nobody expected. McMahon wanted larger-than-life characters who could appeal to children and casual viewers. Wrestlers became comic book heroes and villains with simple motivations. The subtle heel psychology that made the Midnight Express special got lost in a system that prioritized spectacle over storytelling. Their technical wrestling skills seemed less important than having a catchy entrance theme and colorful costumes. They had matches and angles with the Hart Foundation and Legion of Doom, but the presentation and TV format in WWE limited the kind of slow-burn psychology they used in the territories. Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart were technically skilled wrestlers who understood psychology, but the matches lacked the emotional investment that Southern crowds brought to wrestling shows. The Legion of Doom represented everything the WWE valued. They were big, loud, and visually impressive. Working with them required the Midnight Express to adjust their style to accommodate power moves and dramatic moments instead of technical sequences. WWE's production values and storyline approach changed their character dynamics completely. Television production focused on backstage segments and interview spots that felt scripted instead of organic. Jim Cornette's rapid-fire speaking style got edited into sound bites that lost their impact. The natural heat-generating abilities that made them successful in the NWA didn't translate to WWE audiences who expected different types of entertainment. Their characters became simplified versions of what they had been in Southern Territories. Sports entertainment required different skills than traditional wrestling. Character development happened through scripted promos instead of natural personality expression. Storylines followed predetermined paths that left little room for improvisation. The Midnight Express found themselves working within creative restrictions that limited their ability to generate organic heat from audiences. Their sophisticated psychology seemed out of place in an environment that valued simplicity and broad appeal. Wrestlers had to think about camera angles and production cues instead of just connecting with live crowds. The financial benefits were substantial, but the creative trade-offs proved frustrating. Their paychecks were bigger than anything they had earned in regional territories, and the exposure was nationwide instead of limited to specific geographic areas. But they had less control over their characters and storylines than they were used to. Creative decisions came from writers who didn't understand what made them special. Their input mattered less than following predetermined scripts and production requirements. They were making more money, but having less fun doing work that felt less fulfilling than their NWA success. WE later revived the name in 1998 with different wrestlers, an episode Cornette said wasn't the same lineage. The experience taught them that money and exposure couldn't replace creative satisfaction. They were successful financially but frustrated artistically. The creative restrictions limited their ability to showcase what made them special as performers. Success measured in dollars didn't compensate for the artistic limitations they faced in an environment that didn't value their particular strengths. Their WWE stint highlighted how wrestling politics and corporate priorities could overshadow pure talent and historical significance. The disconnect between their abilities and how they were utilized would become a pattern that extended far beyond their active wrestling careers. Years of Hall of Fame ceremonies have passed without the Midnight Express receiving recognition, and there are several likely factors fans and observers cite for their absence from WWE's Hall of Fame. Cornette's long-standing public criticisms of WWE, Condrey's long periods out of the public eye, and backstage political relationships all play potential roles. None of these alone proves a conspiracy, but they are recurring themes raised in interviews and shoot comments from wrestling insiders who question the team's continued exclusion. Cornette's public criticisms of WWE and its talent have strained his relationship with the company, a fact that observers cite when speculating about Hall of Fame choices. He doesn't hide his feelings about current WWE programming or business practices. His podcasts and interviews regularly attack WWE's creative direction and booking decisions. Cornette has called modern WWE wrestlers unprofessional and criticized their lack of traditional wrestling psychology. He has publicly feuded with current WWE stars and made disparaging comments about the company's leadership. His public feuds with WWE officials and modern wrestling philosophy have made him persona non grata with the company's decision-makers. Cornette represents everything WWE wants to distance itself from in terms of old-school wrestling attitudes. His criticism goes beyond just disagreeing with creative decisions. He attacks the fundamental approach WWE takes to wrestling entertainment. Company officials view him as someone who actively undermines their product and business model through his constant negativity. Cornette has attacked WWE's booking practices by calling them illogical and damaging to wrestling's credibility. He has criticized specific storylines and matches on his podcast shows. His comments about individual wrestlers and their abilities have created tension with people currently employed by WWE. He has questioned the company's hiring practices and training methods. These public attacks have made him an unwelcome presence in WWE's corporate culture. His feuds with modern wrestling philosophy extend to fundamental disagreements about what professional wrestling should be. Cornette believes wrestling should focus on athletic competition and realistic storytelling. WWE prioritizes entertainment spectacle and broad audience appeal. These philosophical differences create conflicts that go beyond simple creative disagreements. Cornette's public statements make WWE officials view him as an enemy of their current business model. Dennis Condrey's reclusive nature complicates any potential induction ceremony because he rarely makes public appearances. Condrey withdrew from wrestling completely after his active career ended. He doesn't attend wrestling conventions or reunion shows. His absence from wrestling-related events makes it difficult for WWE to plan ceremonies that require all team members to participate. Hall of Fame inductions typically feature speeches and appearances from inductees. Political considerations influence Hall of Fame selections beyond pure merit in ways that fans don't always understand. WWE uses Hall of Fame inductions to promote current storylines and business relationships. They prefer inductees who will generate positive publicity and support company initiatives. Personal relationships between inductees and company officials matter more than historical accomplishments. The Hall of Fame serves WWE's current business interests rather than just honoring wrestling history. While WWE's Hall of Fame has not inducted them, the team and its members have received recognition elsewhere and are regularly cited by historians and wrestlers as major influences. Cornette was inducted into the NWA Hall of Fame in 2005, acknowledging his contributions to wrestling history. Independent wrestling promotions regularly honor their contributions to the business. Wrestling historians consistently rank the Midnight Express among the greatest tag teams in history. The wrestling community's frustration with their continued exclusion has grown stronger every year. Their matches are still studied by current wrestlers and trainers. Fans express disappointment on social media every year when Hall of Fame announcements exclude the Midnight Express. Wrestling websites publish articles questioning their absence and advocating for their induction. Other Hall of Fame inductees mention them in speeches as deserving candidates. The sustained advocacy for their inclusion demonstrates widespread support throughout the wrestling community. The Midnight Express's Hall of Fame snub represents how personal relationships and corporate politics can influence recognition decisions. Their exclusion demonstrates how backstage tensions can overshadow legitimate historical contributions. The situation reveals that Hall of Fame selections aren't always based purely on merit or fan support. Is the absence a simple consequence of sour relationships and logistics, or is it an example of how Hall of Fame politics can overlook real contributions? The answer may depend on whether wrestling's most prestigious honor truly celebrates the sport's greatest achievements or serves other purposes entirely. The Midnight Express legacy extends far beyond Hall of Fame politics through three concrete contributions to wrestling history. Their technical excellence and psychological storytelling revolutionized tag team wrestling methods. Wrestling schools still use their matches as teaching examples for timing and crowd manipulation. Their defining feud with the Rock and Roll Express created the blueprint for tag team psychology that modern wrestlers study today. Backstage politics complicate how wrestling history gets officially recognized. Personal relationships and corporate interests influence Hall of Fame selections beyond pure merit. Official honors notwithstanding, their matches and methods continue to shape how tag teams are trained and judged. Do you think the Midnight Express should be in the WWE Hall of Fame? Why or why not? Tell us below. Their rise, their falls, and the politics around them make the Midnight Express one of wrestling's most important and most controversial tag teams. Like and subscribe for 100 years of luck. Until next time.